of Mr. Odinga's propensity for violent attempts at capturing power, which began in 1982. It is a demonstration of Mr. Odinga's contempt for democracy and the rule of law, constitutionalism, as well as peace. Times are indeed hard, and Kenyans are trying their best to get going. Anyone making life so much more unbearable through selfishly motivated political violence is unlikely to be viewed with much understanding. Moreover, as demonstrated, Mr. Odinga's arguments about the cost of living contradict his earlier position and are unsupported by the fact of prevailing market prices. His agitation has to do with subsidies that were allocated under the pretext of cushioning Kenyans from high prices, which in fact were embezzled by Azimio handshake regime leadership in one of the country's most scandalous thefts. The failure. Mr. Odinga's criminal escapades are desperate futilities. He does not enjoy the support of the entire Azimio constituency or Kenyans in general. There were no demonstrations or protests in counties of the Central, Rift Valley, Western, Eastern, Northeastern, and Coast region. Ultimately, only Kisumu bore the brunt of the criminality aside from goons mobilized by ODM MPs to terrorize poor mama bogas. There were no demos in Siekuru, Yeshogo, or even Daragwa, where some of the Azimio leaders come from. It is quite evident that some regions require to emancipate from the Odinga yoke and slavery of being used as pawns for self-preservation of a single individual's thirst for power. So questions to Mr. Odinga are the following. Besides Mr. Odinga's reasons and actions beg the question, how does a disrupting campaign of looting and violent mayhem address the cost of living? Why actually didn't he demonstrate before the elections when unga was costing 230 shillings? But now he's demonstrating when it has come down to 170. That is hypocrisy. How does subjecting hard-working Kenyans to hardship and causing enormous losses to traders and businesses improve the cost of living? When Odinga and his Azimio partner left government at the end of the hardship, the cost of a packet of unga was between 230 and 240. It is now ranging between 170 to 200. Isn't it basic arithmetic that the prices are coming down? The Handshake Brothers Unholy Alliance. To Mr. Odinga and Mr. Kenyatta, we have one message for you. When in a hole, stop digging. We are only beginning to get to grips with the insane magnitude of embezzlement, looting, murder, abuse of office, and sheer impunity that took place during the 5 years of the handshake regime. As we do so, we begin to understand your desperate resolve to sabotage all accountability and Kenya's return to physical sanity, financial stability, accountability in governance, and economic health. You will fail. The violence, chaos, looting, and destruction are also aimed at distracting the country from investigating the shameless siphoning of public funds, crimes against humanity perpetrated through extrajudicial killings and forced disappearances, abuse of office, and state capture that enabled large-scale corruption and impunity committed by Mr. Odinga's sponsor and co-conspirator and handshake co-principal, Uhuru Kenyatta. This will fail, and the truth will be known. Police action commendable. To the Kenya Police, we salute you for having quickly come of age and for rising to the occasion. The President's action to restore fiscal autonomy to the service is paying the anticipated dividends of efficiency and professionalism. We commend you for doing your best to keep Kenyans and their livelihoods safe and secure. We urge you to enforce the law firmly and bring all perpetrators of the criminal mayhem committed at Mr. Odinga's behest to account. They must be charged for every stone thrown, property looted, goods destroyed, and persons injured, no matter who they may be. It is also time to raise the bar and make Azimio and ODM fully accountable for the injury, loss, and damage occasioned by the rioters thuggery they mobilized on the pretext of constitutionally protected demonstration. We urge a reckoning of the damages and the speedy accountability in conjunction with the registrar of political parties. Finally, it is time to confront a ridiculous predicament that has remained unresolved for a very long time. The government must determine once and for all if Mr. Odinga is above the law. If he is above the law, there is no further purpose in asking anyone else to obey the law. If, on the other hand, the government determines that Mr. Odinga is not above the law, it must activate all appropriate mechanisms to bring him to accountability without further delay, because justice must be done. That time is now or never. Thank you very much.
Great.
Yeah, I think the leadership can add more.
Yeah, and the SG.
And the SG.
I go first?
Yes.
Okay. I join the rest of my colleagues in saying three quick things about yesterday's unfortunate events in our country. Number one, I wish to commend the restraint of the Kenya Kwanza supporters. I know many of them watched with utter shock and dismay as their lives were unnecessarily interrupted. They could not go about their businesses, their children could not go to school, and many other duties that they could not go about because of the incessant, ugly behavior of ODM goons that they reign terror in this city and few parts of the country. I have seen messages from many of them to these leaders that are behind me here, asking them, up to when shall we allow these people to continue to blackmail us and stop our day routines with reckless abandon? I wish to plead with them that kindly allow the government of the day time as we sort this issue for once and for all. Never again shall Kenyans continue to live under Mr. Odinga's blackmail, for which he is rewarded after every election. This administration has said this is the final time, this shall never happen again. Secondly, I wish to join the rest of my colleagues in celebrating our police officers who, despite a lot of provocation from ODM goons, you saw police officers innocently standing in stifling hot sun, being hunted like dogs by ODM mandarins. But they kept their calm, they never shot anybody, they peacefully dispersed the crowds. We want to tell our police officers that is what we expect. The only challenge that we want to give to the police is that those looters that are publicly known, those that have been captured on cameras, breaking up meetings, stoning people's vehicles, going into business premises, we want to see them arrested, and arrested right now. The leaders that have been accompanying them into these demonstrations, they also need to be arrested and brought to book. But we celebrate the good work of our police officers. We know you're working under very difficult circumstances. It was not difficult for you to shoot some of the people that were clearly provoking you, but you kept your calm and you maintained peace and order and protected people's property. We celebrate you as our police officers. That is what we expect of you. We hope that we shall continue to hold firm despite all that intimidation and threats that is coming from the Azimio side. Lastly, is to the great people of Luo Nyanza. We celebrate you also because you largely remained peaceful, save for a few goons that were hired by Odinga through his ODM MPs. Many of you kept your calm. You went about your business. You are sending messages and pleading for help, saying, even you in Luo Nyanza, you are tired of this blackmail. And let nobody lie to you that the only way through which you can get development is through a handshake via Mr. Odinga. That is a lie. We give you an assurance that President William Ruto is a fair man. Every region of this country will enjoy the fruits of development with or without Mr. Odinga. In any case, we have come to learn that he only uses you to ascend to power, but when he gets there, there is nothing to show for it. Take an example of the time during which the handshake regime was in power. There is nothing of substance that can be pointed out in Luo Nyanza and shown that they gained this by being under the handshake government. In fact, Many of the projects that were put there, Mr. Odinga ended up looting those projects. An example is the Soin Koru Dam, where close to R1 billion shillings was paid to the contractor. But if you go back to that project on the boundary of Kericho and Kisumu, there's nothing to show for it. Mr. Odinga disappeared with that particular money. Therefore, let them not lie to you that the only way you can get development is by picketing and throwing stones so that he forces his way into government. All he is looking for is an opportunity for him and his family to loot this country. Do not allow him. Keep calm and know that you are part of Kenya. You will enjoy every right like every other citizen of this country. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me also join my colleagues first in condemning the massive looting, chaos and anarchy that was witnessed yesterday, orchestrated by Mr. Odinga, the Lord of Violence, and sponsored by his principal sponsor, former President Uhuru Kenyatta. And I also want to confirm that indeed many leaders here and many others who are not here are under immense pressure from their constituents. Kenyans, peace-loving Kenyans, asking government, if government is not able to take care of the situation, pressuring leaders that the public be allowed to protect their lives, their businesses, and their property. And as we commend the police for the very good work that they did yesterday, we want to ask them today that they must hold people to account for the anarchy yesterday, for the massive looting of property and destruction of property, and nobody should be a sacred cow. And when his president said that the Constitution is the Constitution of the Republic and everybody is under that Constitution and the laws of the Republic, including the president himself, Mr. Odinga and Mr. Kenyatta are no exception. They must submit themselves to the whims of our Constitution and our laws and abide by them. And we want to encourage the Inspector General of Police, fear nobody. Don't just arrest the young boys and the young girls who are being paid to demonstrate. If the buck stops at the door of Mr. Odinga, go for Mr. Odinga. If the buck stops at his sponsor's door, go for them. Failure to which, then you leave Kenyans to protect themselves and to protect their property. And we do not in any way desire that time comes to pass in our lifetime, where Kenyans will take it upon themselves to protect themselves and their property. Aware that that is what Mr. Odinga and his sponsor want, so that the country can degenerate into chaos. For Mr. Odinga to find an avenue swimming in the blood of innocent Kenyans to get an opportunity at another stab of getting closer to political power. We want to remind Mr. Odinga he had the time under the handshake regime, he had the means, he had the system he always sought, he had the deep state, but instead of using the deep state and the means and the system he had to ensure that he campaigned and won over the hearts and the minds of the Kenyan people, he spent his time in government enabling, facilitating, and enjoying the loot that came out of the handshake regime, especially in the last 6-7 months of that regime. We are also aware their principal motivation in orchestrating this chaos is to intimidate government, to stall the investigations that they are aware are ongoing on the massive extrajudicial killings that are crimes against humanity. And we want to remind Mr. Kenyatta, it's barely 6 years or 5 years since he was acquitted of crimes against humanity by the ICC. The crimes perpetuated under his watch by DCI Kinoti and the SSU unit I know it's a great motivation for him and his handshake partner to want to orchestrate chaos to preempt these investigations. The massive looting of our economy through the telecom saga, the road sector that we mentioned last week, the maize and fuel subsidies, the COVID-19 Chama billionaires, they know and they are aware that investigations are on high gear. And therefore they want to preempt all these investigations. But as we have said, they will fail. And the truth very soon shall be known on who are the beneficiaries of the telecom haste, of the Chama COVID billionaires haste, of the road sector haste, where, as we mentioned last week, roads were being contracted. Foreign contractors were being contracted to build roads with no procurement being done, and at costs that you cannot imagine. That people can be contracted to build a gravel road at a price of 40 million shillings a kilometer with no due process. These are the things Mr. Odinga and Mr. Kenyatta are afraid of. But we want to reinforce what the President has stated earlier, that we shall be a country that shall be governed by the rule of law and constitutionalism, not the rule of men. Therefore, we want to tell them nobody will be intimidated by their chaos. However, we have said what Mr. Odinga is doing is only equivalent to what bandits in parts of North Rift and Northern Kenya are doing to the lives of innocent Kenyans. What they are doing is banditry with cattle rustling. Mr. Odinga is involved in a scheme of urban banditry, and he must be held to account. It is political and urban banditry and economic terrorism, which cannot be a solution to the high cost of living. And that's why we're asking Mr. Odinga and Mr. Kenyatta, how will destroying property and destroying the economy help to bring down the cost of living? And we must tell you, Mr. Kenyatta, Mr. Odinga, the cost of living is where it is because you too took it there. You looted this economy dry. The subsidies you are demanding that they be reinstated were your schemes to loot from the people of Kenya. And we want to be categorical that those subsidies will not come back. And they will not come back because the government has a plan in place. And that is why we have said, only this morning, I have bought a packet of Jogo maize flour from Naivas here in town at 191 shillings. The same packet of Jogo was retailing at 230, 240 shillings only in June last year when Mr. Odinga and Mr. Kenyatta were in charge. And not just in charge of government, but in charge of the looting spree that they superintended at that time. Therefore, the pretext that they are leading Kenyans in a protest against the high cost of living is just a smokescreen. And we want to tell Mr. Odinga, even your own demonstrations are a failure. And that is why we have appealed to our brothers and sisters in Luo Nyanza. Please, don't fall into the same trap of enslavement that Mr. Odinga has enslaved in you over the years. It is rather unfortunate that a young entrepreneur from Luo Nyanza, the proprietor of Pit Stop in Kisumu, had to lose his business yesterday, courtesy of the anarchy orchestrated by Mr. Odinga. It is a pity, and that is why we have asked the Registrar of Political Parties that she must, and the Office of the Registrar of Political Parties must hold ODM as a political party to account for the massive destruction of property at the UDA offices in Kisumu. And our Secretary General is here, he will confirm the level of damages that were incurred by our party. And since ODM as a political party enjoys funds from the political party's fund, the Secretary General is writing to the ORPP to ensure that she withholds money going to ODM to cater for the damages occasioned to our offices and property, including motor vehicles that were parked in that property in Kisumu. As we appeal to the great people of Kisumu to desist from being incited by a man whose insatiable thirst for political power and insatiable appetite for bloodshed is unmatched in the history of our country. Thank you.
SG.
Asante. I want to join my... Haya basi nataka kujiunga na wenzangu hapa kwa kusema kwamba kwanza nimeghadhabishwa na lile tendo lilifanyika kule Kisumu katika ofisi yetu ya UDA. Mliona wale wanachama wa ODM walijikusanya wakaenda wakatia moto jumba letu la UDA na yale magari ambayo yalikuwa pale. Vile majority leader amesema hapa kwamba sisi kama chama tunaenda kuandikia registrar of political parties aende ahakikishe kwamba ODM wamewajibika vilivyo kwa yale kama chama kwa ile ghasia ambayo walifanya kule Kisumu jana. Na vile vile ningependa kuambia wale wanachama wa UDA wa Kisumu, msiwe na shaka. Kuchoma jengo ama kuchoma magari yetu sio mwisho wa chama. Chama ni watu. Na ningependa kuchukua fursa hii kutangaza kwamba next week on Tuesday tunaenda kupaka rangi tena kule Kisumu kutengeneza ofisi yetu. Sasa watu wa Dala mutarajie UDA iko Kisumu on Tuesday. Sasa tutaenda Tuesday kesho, wiki ijayo, tuhakikishe kwamba tumepaka rangi vizuri ofisi yetu, tumeregesha furniture ambayo ilikuwa pale na usajili ya members wetu iendelee vile tulikuwa tunafanya wiki iliyopita. Jambo la pili, jana mliona Raila Odinga kwanza alituambia kwamba anapeleka petition kule kwenye Ikulu. Na vile nilikuwa nafuatilia vyombo vya habari asubuhi, nikamuona ako pale Serena. Nikadhania ako katika barabara ya kwenda Ikulu. Ile advice ningependa kupatia Raila na watu yake ni kwamba next time ukiunda maandamano, buy enough bundles. Sababu Google Map yenyu iliwapoteza ikawapeleka kule Isili, Madare kule chini. Ikulu iko karibu na Serena. Kama ulikuwa unataka kweli kuleta petition pale Ikulu, basi ungetembea 1 kilometer tu pale upeleke petition yako. So next Monday tafadhali usizunguke. Ikulu iko pale karibu na Serena. Wewe amuka asubuhi, uje pale Ikulu, utapata wakina Sherioto wamekungoja pale kwa gate. Na kina Ali Muhammad, na kina Osoro, na kina ama utume ujumbe kwa WhatsApp wako kama unaogopa kufika Ikulu. Lakini mwisho tunasema kwamba maneno ya IBC, mambo ya kusumbua wa Kenya, wewe Raila unaambia wa Kenya wafungue server. We only have 2 responses for you. One, wewe enda fungua server ya ODM nominations kwanza. Umeibia watu kura wakati wa nominations au hujaifungua server. Uliibia wamama kura katika nominations ya Kisumu, ukapatia dada yako certificate. Ukaibia watu kule Siaya nominations za ODM, ukapatia ndugu yako certificate. Ukakuja hata server ya nominations za watu kwenda Iyala, haujafungua, uliweka mtoto wako kwenda pale Iyala. So kabla utuitishe maneno ya servers, enda fungua server ya ODM kwanza. Jambo la pili, kwa maneno ya server, sisi tunajua vizuri sana rais hana kifungu ya server. Rais sio mwenye kufungua server. Mulikuwa katika Supreme Court, mkaambiwa, mkataka orders za kwenda scrutinize zile kura ambazo zilipigwa. Na mlipewa hiyo nyadhifa na Supreme Court na hakuna kitu ambayo ilifanyika. Sisi tunasema Raila, IBC itatengenezwa, IBC mpya kutumia sheria ile ambayo wewe na Uhuru Kenyatta mulitumia mkaweka Cherera na wale wengine watatu. Hiyo sheria hatujabadiliza. Tutatumia hiyo sheria kuleta wale IBC commissioners wageni. Na kama unataka kwamba wewe ndio uteue wale commissioners, basi leta sheria katika bunge hii, hao wabunge wajadili, tutajua kama itapita ama itapita. But in the meantime, we want to tell you, we are going to observe and follow the rule of law. Our constitution stipulates how we are going to get our IBC commissioners, and you are not going to amend the law to favor you, Raila Odinga.
Thank you. Wacha David Ochieng aseme. You know, there are few brave leaders from Nyanza who are intent of emancipating the people of Nyanza from this level.
Thank you so much. I just want to remind my brothers in Nyanza and larger Western that the next elections is 2027. So the idea that there will be a way in which Raila will be president between now and 2027 wasahau hiyo. Hakuna uchaguzi katikati hapa ama mwaka ujao ama mwaka ile nyingine. Na hakuna njia nyingine yoyote ambayo Raila atatumia kufanya awe rais. So tukubali kwamba rais ni William Ruto, and our constitution is very clear that if you run in an election, it says that if you get 50+1 votes, you are the president.
Yeah.
And so there's a president in place. Let's agree with that fact that there'll be no other election. William Ruto got 50+1%, and he is the president. He's going to be here for a while. Number two, I'm getting fearful because the wars that we are fighting now are almost personal wars. Almost personal hatred on the person of the president. Yani ile chuki na madharau kwa rais. Ningependa kuambia kwamba Raila angekuwa rais leo, tungependa awe na heshima. So tunauliza kwamba sisi pia nyumbani tupatie rais aliopo heshima ambayo inaenda na ofisi ya rais. Because if Raila was president today, we would want to be respected, to be allowed to work. So let's allow the person who has been elected to work. Number three, this talk about we are the people. Kenya Kwanza also are the people. Yeah. Everyone has the people. Yes. So if you say you have more people than us, what about the day you also bring our people out? So the idea about the people, nataka tuseme kwamba the people depends on where you are. The election that finished showed that Kenya Kwanza had more people than Azimio. That's the truth. And so the idea that, oh, we can use Article 1 of the Constitution, but we are the people, there are more people on this side, and they're just being patient. Finally, I want to keep calling upon my little brothers. Sarova Hotel in Kisumu was not working for 3 years, was opened 2 months ago. Why did you break the windows of that hotel? KCB has been there for the last how many years? Why do you break the windows of a bank? Your brothers are working there, your sisters are working there. Now, Governor Nyong'o says that people should not target some buildings. He should tell people down there that they should not target all the buildings. You cannot be saying that today you want to put riot, tomorrow you want them to look buildings, and you are not taking care. And I agree with my brothers here that all of us in Kenya Kwanza will do letters to the ORPP that anybody who was injured, even the person who was killed in Maseno, must be paid by the ODM. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Just 1 minute. Mheshimiwa Haika, 1 minute.
Mimi nataka kuungana na wenzangu kumwambia Mheshimiwa Raila ya kwamba ni lazima aheshimu Kenya na aheshimu wa Kenya. Alikuwa anasema kwamba yeye ni mzalendo. Mzalendo gani ambaye anaruhusu mali ya Kenya kuharibika na Wakenya kugadhabika, kupata shida? Nchi ya Kenya imekuwa kurudi katika hali yake ya kawaida. Tumekuwa tukiona uchumi ukibadilika kwa polepole. Tumeona kule upande wa Mombasa na kwingine watalii walikuwa wameanza kurudi na biashara za watu zimeanza kurudi vizuri. Juzi tumeona a lot of cancellation na utalii umeanza kwenda mbaya na biashara za watu nyingi zikiharibika. Tumeona mali ya watu ikiharibika. Tunataka kumwambia hivi ya kwamba kama yeye ni mzalendo na kama yeye anasema kweli ni mzalendo, basi aheshimu wa Kenya. Tunajua uchaguzi ulipita na tunajua hii fujo yote anafanya ni kwa binafsi yake yeye mwenyewe, ni kwa maslaha yake yeye mwenyewe, kwa sababu wakati alikuwa katika ile inaitwa handshake tuliona bidhaa za vitu zikipanda bei na hakuna siku alitoka barabarani akisema ya kwamba bidhaa zimepanda bei, tuamuke. Hatukutetea Wakenya na uchumi ukiwa mbaya. Kwa hivyo tumwambie sasa hivi atulize boli, awache nchi iendeshwe vizuri, tuweze kurekebisha uchumi wa Kenya tukiongozwa na rais ambaye ni William Samoei Ruto.
Asanteni sana. Asante.
Thank you very much.
Inoro wako.
Thank you.
Inoro.
Naam, hawa ni wabunge kutoka mrengo wa Kenya Kwanza. na wamemaliza kuhutubia wanahabari, wameweza kuzungumzia yale yaliyofanyika jana jijini Nairobi na Kenya na pande zingine za Kenya.
Going forward at least.
Twamwita nĩ ũndũ wa kũmenereria na gũthomithia ciĩko iria cirekirwo ira nĩ Odinga na arĩa maramũhembia matongoretio nĩ sponsor wake mwene project ya Azimio na arĩ mũtongoria wa bũrũri witũ President Uhuru Kenyatta na twauga ũngĩrora ira ũitangi wa thakame ũrĩa ũrekĩkire gũthũkangio kwa indo nyũmba cia andũ kũhũrwo na mahiga nyũmba cia andũ kũiywo taũni bũrũri na economy kũrũgamio mũthenya mũgima mũthenya wa ira kuma rĩrĩa maraumĩrire harĩa Serena nĩ hathara nene mũno ĩrongoreirio gũkio bũrũri-inĩ ũyũ na nĩkĩo tũramoria atongoria acio a Azimio matongoretio nĩ chairman wa Azimio Uhuru wa Kenyatta rũmĩrĩrwo project yao Odinga na tũmũndũ tũu tũngĩ twao twa moko tũkua thaburia na mĩiko tũkamoria angĩkorwo maandamano maya marenda nĩgetha macokie thogora wa mũtũrĩre thĩ gũthũkia economy gũcokia thogora ya mũtũrĩre thĩ atĩa tũkamaririkania ũmũthĩ rũcinĩ nyuma supermarket ya Nairobi na ndagũra mũtu wa njogo ndagũra ciringi 100 mũtu oro ũcio mwaka ũyũ ũrathirire magana merĩ ma mĩrongo ĩtatũ ũguo matingĩhenania atĩ nĩ mũtu na thogora wa mũico ũratũma meke maandamano mareka tondũ mũndũ gwĩtwara ira nĩamenyererio atĩ aruta haro bũrũri-inĩ o thutha wa thirikari agacaria njĩra ya ngungo ya mũrango wa thutha kana ya nyica ya gũkĩra thirikari wa mbere tũkamwĩra ĩno thirikari ndekũingĩra wa kerĩ tũkera thirikari Raila nĩ arĩa metagwo economic terrorist na sabotua na no nginya akinye kũnyua makinya ũrĩa president auga gũtirĩ mũndũ igũrũ ya watho na igũrũ wa katiba Raila no nginya akinye watho ta andũ arĩa angĩ othe to kũnyita anake arĩa mararĩha moke maiyie indo ciake ona atongoria arĩa maramatongoria nĩ manyitwo na makĩrĩrio watho twauga mbere ya itũ marathũkirie kũrĩa Gĩthumo tũkĩũrania andũ a Gĩthumo na arĩa maragia rũrĩmĩ rwa Kĩnjaruo matigetĩkĩre gũthũkĩrwo rĩngĩ nĩ mũndũ amahũthagĩra agacoka kũrĩa ira nĩ ũronire magĩthũkia biacara cokia bitcoin ya mwanake wao kũrĩa Gĩthumo na magathũkia biacara yake nene mũno koguo hathara nĩ kũrora kwao na ĩcokerere bũrũri na matũũre tũkamoria metĩkĩre kũiga thayũ matigetĩkĩre kũhũthĩrwo na tũkoria Raila angĩkorwo petition ya ira gũtirona agĩthiĩ State House atwĩrire na petition aratwara gũtirĩ handũ ona hamwe ona Gĩthumo maratwarire ona gũkũ gũtirĩ petition maratwarire State House na tũtauga gũtangĩkorwo gũkũrakũrĩte njĩra ya State House ĩrarĩkĩra mũrokia mathari tondũ amuonire mathari na kũrĩa kũu gũtirĩ petition aenda matanacio gũtirĩ thayũ arabatanacio gũtirĩ demonstration cia thayũ kũrĩa marahenania aenda matanacio na nĩ twauga na tuoria andũ aitũ tondũ andũ aitũ nginya rĩu haha ingĩkuonia message iria tũrandĩkĩrwo andũ aitũ mena marakara tũkamoria makirĩrĩrie mahe thirikari nafasi na tũkera aya marainsightia arĩa mwĩmenyerere gũtikanakinye handũ andũ mende kũgitĩra indo ciao arĩo tondũ bũrũri nĩ ũgũthũka nĩguo tũramoria maige thayũ muoroto mũnene wao nĩ kũgeria kũrũgamia investigation cirekwo cia andũ arĩa makĩria ma 230 moragire na njĩra ĩgwĩtwo extrajudicial killings na forced disappearance nĩ marageria kũrũgamia investigations cannot be done. Wabesha mabilioni maili ono mieri kugwanja ya mwisho kuma cia Telcom, cia mabarabara, cia subsidy cia irio, cia subsidy cia maguta na ciothe tithwe murauga ndironire nginya controller of budget na auditor general agĩtara mbeca iria ciairwo na njĩra iria ciairwo. Rĩu nĩ twĩmena hahu ya maũndũ macio no tũkamera angĩkorwo mwĩcirĩtie gũikia mahiga nĩguo gũkũria thirikari nĩgũtuĩria na nĩkuoneka na ũrĩa wĩna mahĩtia nĩegũthitangwo matige kũhũthĩra mbara. Andore mamenyerire gukinyaga gatwari yake na gatwari yake na ngire kura gatwari yake niko eje muthenya wa maandamano maria turone marani maandamano ma mundu kiciria o uria kagamia kayothe agoka akenderia andu guoya agoka agakia mahiga meri matatu agacoka ageciria nyaki undu wa kumakania muno makiria.
Sasa shikilia hii mheshimiwa.
Tuende tufanye pale.
Lakini nafanya moja.
Tufanya wewe.
Time. Nenda time nakimbia.
Tumwire maundu kama maundu mako. Bila wa mtu kulia kulia cia atu aria matari na mawira.
Naam, hivi sasa tunaungana naye katibu mkuu wa chama cha UDA na wamesema kuwa wataandika barua katika msajili wa vyama humu nchini Kenya, na tunataka tu kumuuliza wataandika barua yenyewe lini na wanataka waweze wakarudishiwa pesa ngapi ambazo jana ziliharibiwa na wavamizi wa Azimio One Kenya Alliance. Hujambo bwana Cleophas Malala?
Sijambo. Kwanza kabisa tumesema kwamba tumeghadhabishwa sana na masuala ambayo ilifanyika jana, ile ghasia ambayo ilifanyika jana dhidi ya ofisi yetu kule Kisumu. Sisi tunasema kwamba kama chama tunataka tu condemn hiyo act na ilifanywa na wanachama wa ODM. Tungependa kusema kwamba tunaenda kumwandikia msajili wa vyama barua ya kusema kwamba ODM wajibike vilivyo, kwa sababu sio vyema kwanza kuchoma na kuvandalize ofisi za vyama zingine. Tunataka kuandika hiyo barua na tutakuwa tunaenda pia kotini kuhakikisha kwamba ile pesa registrar anapeana kwa ODM isimamishwe kwanza mpaka jambo hili litatuliwe. Tungependa walipe mali ambayo waliharibu, magari ambazo walichoma, ofisi ambayo waliharibu, ni lazima wajibike vilivyo. Barua yenyewe iko tayari, imebaki tu kutia sahihi. Nitatia sahihi nikirudi kwa ofisi tupeleke. Tuhakikishe kwamba ODM wamewajibika kabisa.
Unaweza kadiria ni hasara ya pesa ngapi mlipata hapo jana kule kuchomwa katika ofisi yenu kule Kisumu?
Tumepatia wakili wetu na secretary yetu nafasi waende waangalie, sababu ni kitu ambacho ilifanyika jana, itabidi waende waangalie tuhakikishe kwamba ni pesa ngapi. Hiyo ni ripoti ambayo itakuja baadaye, lakini kwa sasa hivi tunasema tu kwa ujumla kwamba ni lazima watawajibika. Thank you.
Na budget ino actually niko tumekira kiaga ino turabona tureke ibintu bya kwa Kenya tureke para tureke amakuru na tureke amautumari kwa mareka koko mai kwa kia gasi karuru wamenye kia gasi ya mwanzo kia gasi ya sebe ya marugere ya kile na tuligaji na kile na hindi wanatushia koko mai kwa karuru wamenye no kakuruge galu kakogo makienda mana kama wamenye gatia gasi kwa kutoka jira hatu hatagirire koko moto kwa hivyo we are not going to be again. They tried yesterday to demonstrate in Chama. Whatever became of these demonstrations is actually nothing. They tried to go to the State House. They could not even access anywhere they could.
Tuwaeleze ya kwamba ile rais wanataka yeye saa hizi. Sio wale wamekuwa they can do whatever they want, but we are not going to anyone. We are not going to self-honor anyone. We the people of Kenya voted on the 8th of August, and they made a very profound and very articulate decision which we must follow consideration. Kwa hivyo hakuna kitu kingine. Sisi ndio watoto ya mama. Sisi ndio watoto wa Kenya. Walikuwa wakaandamana hapa tuanze kuwaeleza. Kama mtu anataka kuongea, aongee na marafiki wake. Maneno ya serikali iko na mwenyewe na watu